3, 2, 1.
Well, all right, everyone. Welcome to the Words to Send podcast with your hosts, Matt and Mike. Mike and Matt. It's one of those days, man.
That's why they call them co-hosts, you know?
That's
yeah,
right,
either way.
So that's Matt. I'm Mike. And we are season 2, episode 9. So tribe, community, and belongingness is what it is that we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, it's important.
Yes, kind of, again, speaking to that warrior operating system piece, but, you know, this notion of belongingness, tribe, community, relationships, I'd say somewhat related to what Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence, you know, the ability to relate, with other people, really important. So, before we go too far down the road, let me just pose this question. What is it about military service or police, fire, EMS, any of our first responder brothers and sisters for that matter? What is it about that service that produces such esprit de corps and camaraderie? I mean, I'm sure you've seen it in your units as I have in mine. Does this relate to tribe, community, and belongingness? And what implications does this hold for overall mental health and well-being? So we'll discuss that during this episode. So, let's throw it out there, and then let's talk, what is it about units, good units, military service in general? But I'd submit to you, especially among, the elite units, with a high level of, esprit de corps, what is it about that service that really fosters such, I'll say, camaraderie and that sense of community?
To me, it's like you're joining this team of historic acts and people that's this collective thing that's been ongoing, and you get the honor of being one of them, and I think maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just this collectivism, and striving to deserve, or earn what it is that you're part of. And that just brings up your game, to a level that's more, you perform better than you would because of the level of the people around you.
No, that's a great point, man. There's like identity, lineage, the whole coat of arms thing. No, but you're right. You kind of, at least in the military, you derive strength from that lineage. You're like, man, I've got to live up to whatever it is my predecessors, my forebears have that have gone before me, what they've done. Again, whether special forces, Ranger, the whole Ranger creed. Recognize that I volunteered as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession. I always endeavored to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's real important. But identity, that's the other thing. So speak to that with the units that you've been in.
I think they do a really good job of doing this identity piece. Like, for instance, we're always named something. I'm in the Alpha Company 2501 Black Cats.
That's right.
Or I'm I've been in the Black Cats, the Red Barons, the Black Widows, and all these cool names. And we have like T-shirts, and you get this team, this real team environment, and right. In addition to that, you're in this battalion, and there's several other teams, and you get this kind of friendly rivalry again that brings up the level of competition or your level of performance. And then as we go as a battalion out together, we just are like this. Suddenly, we're like, now we're not rivals, we're cohorts, and it's just like you're in a bigger team now. You're on the Demons, or you're on the brigades team or the divisions team. And I think that that's awesome, that identity, because I grew up in sports, and we all look at us, Kansas City Chief, everything, all that's around right. This city. And it's just this, this feeling, I belong to this, I don't play, but man, I hear people, you hear like an old grandma telling you, why didn't Kelsey catch that, and they knew better what the coach should have done, it's like, because everybody's just bought into this thing.
Everyone's so invested, and it's like we won, you know, it's like, well, you know, those professional players that are killing themselves are the ones that
you
won.
You see that in the military, where, and I know the Marines do it, and I know other units do that, where the Night Stalkers are a big one for Army aviation. That's their
NSDQ, man.
and, you know, stuff like that.
Night Stalkers don't quit.
And I think once you are branded one of those and you've earned the right to be one, because, you know, special forces, you can't just be a special forces guy because you want to. You don't just, hey, needs of the military are sending you. You have to assess and make it. And most people don't do it in their first assessment. You know, it's multiple times. They get injured.
Now, there's something to be said about that. You know, the rite of initiation. Those are some of the things that, you know, I think we'll get to. But yeah, you know, again, with the elite units, I mean, as you pointed out, a lot of it is they don't take just anyone. You know, like, hey, I volunteered, and there you go. I mean, the military writ large, you got to go through basic training or your source of commission.
Right.
And if you can't meet, you know, I'll say the minimum standards, the prerequisites, you're not, you know, you can't play. Right. You know, you can't be a part of the team.
Trust
so
me,
I think,
know that going into those units, you know that you better be on your A game all the time.
Right. So that whole rite of passage thing. So just backing up a little bit. So back to our warrior operating system. So where we're at, you know, belongingness, tribe, ethos, values, and culture, you know, so that's the other thing that I think we're driving at, you know, and in terms of where does that plug into the, you know, the mind, body, and soul? It's the soul, gravitas, agency, esteem, belongingness, and eventually we'll get to self-actualization. But again, now doubling back to what it is that you're saying, it's more than just, hey, sign up and there you go. I mean, you see it all throughout society. You might have a club or an affinity group, and it's just like, hey, if you're willing to participate, that's great. And there's something to be, I'll say, derived or valued from that, most certainly. But I would submit, you know, when people say, why is it that the elite units, you know, have that highest level of esprit de corps and camaraderie? And I think it's the selection aspect. I think it's the shared sacrifice is the other thing. I mean,
the shared
you know,
experience.
and it's not, you know, selection in that, oh, do we like you? It's like, oh no, we're going to put you through the ringer and all the things that you've been through. Hey, you know, you've got to be able to pass all these requisites in order, you know, to be considered a pilot, let alone like an instructor pilot and all the other things that you've done. You know, and to be in that rarefied air, man, that's a club, you know, and I know you must take great pride in that, as would anybody.
Another thing they've done well in those communities is the social support piece, you know, and they've included your family members in this. And I don't know, sometimes they don't do it well, but the ones that do it well, like in a family readiness group or something like that,
sure,
or you're deployed and they join together, the families come together and they are on base or something, but they support each other in our absence. And that kind of thing, like if you're young and married and go from 18 to 30 something and you're, you know, an Army spouse, you get out and it's like, you don't really know how to do insurance. You don't really know how to do the civilian thing, you know, because you've been institutionalized in this, you know, and you have to learn how to do it. It's like speaking a foreign language and going to a foreign everything. And then you get used to it for so long that it's, you know, but once we have our families bought in, they're saying the same, they use the same words as us. They know what a PCS is. They know what, you know, it means to deploy and go to NTC or JRTC. They know what all these things mean too, you know? Right.
No, and I think what you're getting at, what is it, Maslow's, you know, it's the community, tribe, identity, belonging, it's community and support. Actually, I want to say Sebastian Junger, in his book, Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging, if I'm not mistaken, he mentions, what suggests that traditional tribes and close-knit communities provide a strong support system for individuals in times of hardship or trauma. Having a community to rely on fosters a sense of security and support. So aside from just belongingness, hey, I belong, this is great, I'm part of the club, shared values, it's this notion that you've got a group around you that's going to support you when times are tough and not just going to abandon you. And I know you can speak to this, as can I. It's It's one of those things where it's cool to be part of an elite group, and be counted among, the best or some good dudes and dudettes for that matter. But I think just as much it's just this notion that no matter what happened, I always had the notion that if things went south or bad, the big green machine was going to come to get me. Yeah. And you see all those contractors, Blackwater, I'm not disparaging them, a lot of former soft dudes, but hey man, if things went south, those guys, no one's coming to get you. Nope. You're a contractor, you signed on the line, you know what the risks are. Hey, there you go. Not so in the Army and the Special Forces. I mean, never leave a fallen comrade, so says the Ranger Creed. And you knew that as a member of that community, they were going to rally around you and do whatever it took to support you and ensure, your well-being, that they would come for you. So I think that aspect of tribe and community is very important.
That other thing that community builds, like let's say when we're deployed versus when we're at home, like, and we spend a lot of time together, like even outside of a work experience, it's like now we're on our like off time, which is, whatever, off time is still like at work as bombs that could fall on you, but you're like, taking care of your own time and you're around your people that you work with and they become your family because you're gone for so long. You come home and you kind of lose that. But I kind of forgot what I was saying on that, but that part of that, I would think that, I know what it was, the firefighters and stuff like that they just do like a 3-day thing in the firehouse and then they're cooking together and they're sleeping in the same place and they're taking care of the firehouse. I would imagine that builds that similar deployment feeling of camaraderie.
Yeah,
like you almost live like roommates.
No, I think what you're getting at is like proximity. Right? It's in the military, especially like with deployment. If it were all 9 to 5-ish, even if you were doing tough stuff, but every day you went home and you just saw those guys and gals during the work, that'd be one thing. It's altogether different to deploy overseas, again, shared sacrifice, danger, being in harm's way, knowing that you've got to depend on these people. And hey, they've got your back, you've got theirs. That's a different level of community, man, versus the fair weather friend. Oh, I love you, brother. Yeah, sure you do. Yeah. Right? Until the going gets tough. And we see that all the time. But with relationships and belonging to a tribe like that, altogether different. It's for real because of exactly that. But as you were saying, it's like when you're living and working and,
all of it,
that's like just a different level of bonding.
It's kind of like when you become dating versus married, you see the whole, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you're there for everything, changer, man. It's a game changer.
No, it's true. It's like all of a sudden you're like, oh man, all those
Our sound
habits.
guy's getting nervous. He's like, I'm never getting married. It's like that. No, it's just like, now you see, the good, the bad, and the ugly, man. It's the full package. And, no, there it is. But that's a different level of intimacy to your point, right? Yeah, no, absolutely. So the interpersonal relationships, right, as I think, teed up right in the beginning, this notion that, all right, hey, we're all social beings, right? Have to be, right? You can't survive on your own. So hardwired into everyone. And that's where I think, emotional intelligence, social intelligence comes in. Because as social creatures, you have to be able to navigate that human terrain adroitly, to the point where, all right, hey, I've got to be able to get along and cooperate with other people. Mm-hmm. That belongingness, and it's not just a nicety, it's an absolute necessity. Now you could say that, hey, in today's modern era, could you be a hermit? You probably don't need a super big community behind you. But way back when, if you were ostracized from the tribe, you died, and I think that's why they say it's so wired into people at a visceral level, the notion to, of being liked or gaining approval, because way back when disapproval could mean death. Like we don't want you. You've been ostracized from the tribe, and then you're doomed. So social support, identity and purpose. So let's maybe tease some of that up. Yeah, I think we've said it a lot, but I think it's to me, it's the most important thing. When you lose, like, you know, and in my case, and it's a similar case, but other people have, everybody's got a crazy different story. But in my case, I had risen pretty high up in an organization to the point where I was running, you know, a brigade level standardization shop, which was a big deal. I never thought I would ever be that guy, you know, and then I retired. And you just go from being 100 miles an hour and everybody like, Matt, I need you this, I need this, I need that. And I'm like, how could this place run without me for 5 seconds? And then you go to your retirement ceremony and the big machine rolls on without you and it quickly forgets you.
It doesn't miss a beat.
It doesn't miss a beat. And like, I think that kind of hurt, you know, a little bit when I didn't know. It took me a little time to realize that there's like a, dang, they didn't really need me that bad. I mean, or it's just somebody else would have, like somebody else could have picked up and helped me, you know, wow, that was one thing. But the other thing is like, geez, now what I do now, you know, nobody really, there's nothing really, anybody's yelling for my assistance, you know? So to find a job, and I see guys that are lieutenant colonels and they were like, you know, they commanded a battalion somewhere in combat and now they're, you know, they're out and they're in a job that's far below what we know of. But the civilian people that hired them, they have no idea what it means to have commanded some giant battalion or been an air mission commander on huge assaults. You know, They have no idea what it means or what kind of level of responsibilities. And to them, it's just like, I don't know. So you're just we're going to put you at the low level here. And it's like, oh. And I know that's just, I can see people on LinkedIn, congratulations. And I'm like, oh man, that's what you're doing now. I mean, I know that guy's like his equivalent job is way bigger than that, you know? And so I don't know, you know, it's really difficult to go from hero to zero.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's part of the tribe affiliation too, is, you know, your role in the tribe, you know, and that community is the farther you've gone, the more you've, I'll say, asserted yourself. You know, CW4 at your level within that tribe, you're like, you're a big deal. You know, and lowly lieutenant colonel, but all right, hey, special force lieutenant colonel, cool. All right, that guy, he's done some things. He's got some skills, some additional skill identifiers, some ASIs, right? And then you get out, and I always joke, you know, to my kids that are just like, whatever, Dad. It's just like, you know, people used to salute me and call me sir.
Yeah, I used to be somebody.
I used to be somebody, you know, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I guess those days are over. But no, there's something to be said about being in that tribe that understands, I'll say, your personal value proposition, what it is that you bring to the table, and respects that. But the other thing is just contribution. Is within that tribe, you've got a certain role, and then you're a contributing member, again, that's valued. And one of the things that's always stuck with me, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but and this was specifically for men, but I'd hazard a guess that it's a lot with women as well, but probably at a different level. But it's like not being needed is a slow death for a man, you know. And I'd submit to you that I'm sure a woman feels that way different, you know. But I think some of it is for men. It's not so. I mean, love certainly, but usefulness. I think a woman, and I don't want to speak for women. I'm not a woman. But, you know, I think it's like being loved and appreciated is sufficient.
Valued,
you know, is sufficient in terms of value, that, you know, the nurturer. But I think for guys, it's like, no, I'm important. You know, I can be depended upon.
Right.
You know, I've got more to give, you know, and no, we're good. And that's why, like what you were saying, it's like once, hey, Matt, thanks for your service. We got it from here. And you're like, no, but I was important. No, we're good. We got it. And you're like, okay, so my contribution is no longer valued? No, we just got someone else that can do it. And you're like, well, what does that say about me?
Yeah, right. I'm a dime a dozen.
Yeah, no, exactly. Is that, you know, am I that easily replaced?
Well, you know, the things that they did to condition our brains for that, if you think about what our uniforms were, it's a rolling CV. I mean, it's right on your chest. Everything you've ever done is somehow on you, whether it's rank, branch,
right.
You know, your combat patch, your you're a Ranger tab, what kind of airborne do you have? What kind of, you know, little badges and trinkets you got? And so, I mean, you're walking around and everybody knows what all those mean everywhere you go.
And people have an immediate appreciation for that.
Yeah, I got a mustard stain on my jump badge.
That's right.
You know, that's like, you don't see that anymore. But
combat jump.
yeah. And so like some of these things like just instantly say, this guy is something else or this gal is something else. Like look at the credentials.
Right.
You walk out somewhere else and hand somebody, here's 7 air medals. I don't know what that is. Then again, it's like not even worth a cup of coffee. But when you're in there, for some reason, it's not that you do it for that, but the afterwards, the fact that you're awarded for something you did was always such an accomplished feeling that made you drove to like continue to perform, Right. And those little kinds of little trinkets and things that they held above us, and hey, if you come here, I'll send you this school, and it was just always a way to identify and a way to have more purpose. And I could be more useful to the unit if I go and do these things. Always looking ahead, and then all of a sudden, or always goal-oriented. And the day comes and you retire, and it's like, man, my goal was to retire at 20 plus years, and I've done it, and now I'm 47. Wow, what do I do now? Too young to quit, but like pretty like industrial, or I don't know, institutionalized military. It's hard to change it.
Yeah. No, you're talking about, the trinkets, this and that, and I'm looking at values, in terms of tribe and community. And it brings me back to the history of the military art, which was a class that we had at West Point. So that was everything from the Napoleonic era, through World War II, Vietnam, what have you. And, I remember one of the quotes, and of course, I'm going to paraphrase and do a poor job, but it was Napoleon who went on to say, man does not give his life for a mere stipend or swath of ribbon. You must speak to the soul to electrify the man. And I'm like, so it's this Napoleon Bonaparte. But I think that speaks to the values as well. It's like, hey, the trinkets, this and that. It's not why people do things, man. It's because the values, because they want to be part of that team. They don't want to let their brothers and sisters down.
Exactly.
That's what really motivates people. And you ask, it's like, why do they put themselves in harm's way and do all that hard stuff and leave their families? Why do they do that? It's not for those petty distinctions, sure. I think is what Napoleon termed it. Yeah. It's because they want to be counted among, the elite, the team, yep. And pull their weight and be there. Staying true to the values, I think, is super important. Which again, finally, lastly, belongingness and acceptance. So it's that acceptance, and we can talk about initiation, rites of passage. We can talk about, a few different things, but in the end, living up to those values, meeting those standards, and then being accepted and valued by that group, very, very important. So in as much as I'll say mental health and therapy, we're talking a lot of military anecdotes, but some of the other, I'll say things that we were talking about. So community and support, what is this? What are some of the actionable things? Actively engage in community activities, whether joining clubs or what have you, and that building connections can create a support network. Bottom line is, whether that's the VFW, whether that's the American Legion, whether that's a gym, whether that's a shooting club, but find like-minded people,
right?
That share your values and affinities. So many people just keep to themselves, and that's fine if you're cool with that, but then lament that, God, I feel so isolated. Man, then find somebody that you can relate to. Right. Sense of belonging and mental health. Foster connections with friends, family, social groups. So really what we're getting at there, well, no kidding, okay, that makes sense. Make a distinct effort. And the reason I think that's important to say is, I'll speak for myself. When I do my little personal inventories of hey, where I'm doing well, usually it's work-oriented, workouts, this and that. But that when I look at like relationships, the social side, case in point, like you and I, after we do this, we'll go out and get something to eat and just catch up and stuff. Left to my own devices, I would just go home, I'd read, spend time with my kids, but I'm like, no, man, I got to spend time with my co-host beyond just the podcast. But, for other people, they might be like, yeah, well, geez, but for me, it's just like, no, make the effort, man. It's important. And that's part of tribe and community.
It really is. And I think that's a tough one, but places you can find those like-minded people. You think, well, I can't go to like a vet center in my local community because that means I got a problem. It's like, no, I mean, there's a lot of people that go there simply to be around other vets, and that's a great source of place. I mean, obviously you can find places like Warriors Ascent, and we will do stuff, in groups eventually, especially.
Exactly. And not a plug for WA, for Warriors Ascent, but I will share this, and you've seen it. We have so many people come to Warriors Ascent and they say, yeah, hey, I've been in therapy for months, if not years. And, sometimes it's helpful, sometimes not. I think it all depends on your therapist. And some of the things that you're teaching, the cognitive behavior, I've got some of that. But almost invariably, we hear it's like, but being in a group, the group therapeutic setting is so important. So that one article that they did on us in Journal of I think Psychotherapy Integration talks about multimodal, right? The feasibility of multimodal group treatment. So multimodal being, many things.
Yeah.
We come at it from a variety of different modalities, from the cognitive behavioral to the, lifestyle skills to what have you. But the other thing is the group therapy, I think, is super powerful. So you ask yourself, well, why is that? It's for the exact reasons that we're mentioning. It's affirming to know that you're not alone. It's affirming to know that there are other people with shared experiences.
Yes.
And, my point in bringing this up is, if that, at least in our experience, is proven to have such therapeutic benefit, why not just cultivate that on your own?
Yes, somewhere.
Somewhere, and
somehow
surround yourself with people like that on your own.
Yeah.
Because, again, after 61 cohorts and all going on 8 years of doing Warriors Ascent and running our program, that group therapeutic aspect, being around people with shared values and experiences that you can share with, so powerful.
It is so powerful. That's always been the thing for me personally. And just the other thing is to watch another human being recognize that there's nothing wrong with them because everybody else is in there saying that almost word for word, and just seeing this relief come over their face. And it just makes me break down my own inner barriers and go, that giant, scary looking guy over there can all of a sudden break down. So can I.
Right.
And then I can get vulnerable and I can say the things that I need to say or don't even know they're going to come out.
Right.
And
I think people conflate or misconstrue vulnerability with weakness, I'm being vulnerable and I can't defend myself, or I'm just going to be a wishy-washy, and the vulnerability that we're talking about is just like honesty and humility, and it's not being a babbling, blubbering.
No.
It's, hey, if you break down, so be it. But really it speaks to telling people, hey, this is what's hurting me.
Right.
This is what's bothering me. This is what I'm dealing with.
Having the strength to say it. Yeah.
Right. Does anyone else feel similarly, or can anybody help?
The other thing
Does anyone have some advice? That takes
when you
the strength,
do it and you see somebody else go, wow. And I accidentally helped that person just because of my sharing my story. Those kinds of things I think happen all the time. Like if you have 10 people in a cohort, I think it happens to all 10 of them every single time. You might have one person who's just like, oh man, I don't like it to be touched or hugged or emotions or whatever. But, then we get on these group chats afterwards and they're part of them the whole time, for a year plus.
Amen.
My group. Yeah. So, it's a bummer because we all want to get together. One of the cohorts just did get together and had a whole retreat for themselves. And I think anybody could do, it just proves that it's motivation on the individuals. So again, actionable stuff, because that's what we're about.
That's exactly it. So, hey, the actionable piece is find that sense of community, right? So what's the criteria? Identity and belonging, right? Somebody that you can identify with, that sense of belonging. From that, you derive social support. So that's why it's very important, especially when times are tough, no fair weather friends. Shared identity and purpose, right? So again, whether that's VFW, whether that's PBA, could be a variety of things. Find that tribe and community. It's absolutely essential to your mental health. All right. So our last thing, hey, like us, share us, If you're getting something out of this, great. Leave some comments. We love comments, good or bad. We like the good comments better, obviously.
Come see us on our YouTube
if you've got
channel.
an honest critique, then so be it. Thanks
All
so
right.
much. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.